President Biden is fond of saying, show me your budget and I will tell you what you value. If he's got money for people in Lebanon right now, without Congress having to come back, what does it say about his values? There's not enough money right now for
His
people
values,
in North Carolina who need it. That's not misinformation.
Wait, no, that is your whole premise of the question is misinformation, sir.
Ain't nothing changed, nothing new here to see. This ain't nothing but some political maneuvering. America, welcome to the eulogy. Eat it up. It's called political buffoonery.
Hey there, everybody, and welcome to This Week in DUMBmocracy, where we showcase some of the dumbest newsmakers of the week. Over the years, we've seen press secretaries versus reporters square off against each other to the point where familiarity breeds contempt between the two. We saw it during the Trump years with Sarah Sanders and Kayleigh McEnany versus Jim Acosta from CNN, and we've seen it during the Biden years with Peter Doocy versus Jen Psaki, and then Karine Jean-Pierre. Especially these two have really been locking horns. Well, earlier this week on Monday, it got to a fever pitch. Karine Jean-Pierre walked out of a press briefing after Doocy started asking questions about the availability of funds for Lebanon relief versus the lack of availability of funds for hurricane relief right here at home. We're going to go through all of this and examine why Karine Jean-Pierre accused Doocy of breeding misinformation. But before we get to all that, please subscribe to the channel. Hit that notification bell so you don't miss any of the show. And if you like what you're seeing here in this or any other video on the channel, you guys know what to do. You're going to smash that thumbs up button. Like, comment, share the show with your friends. All that really, really good stuff. Because all that's going to help grow the channel via the YouTube algorithm.
Just feed it.
As always, gang, thank you so much for all that you do to help grow the channel wherever you're watching, whether it be YouTube, Rumble, BitChute, Odyssey, X. I'm glad you're here, and I hope this video earns your follow, your like, your subscription, your share, as we talk about the latest interaction between these two combatants in the White House press room. In one corner, Fox News and their right-leaning coverage embodied by Peter Doocy. In the other, the voice of the President of the United States, and now senior advisor to the President, congratulations on the promotion, by the way, Karine Jean-Pierre. The crowd settled in, the bell's about to ring, let's get ready to rumble. To the casual observer of media and news, the White House press briefing is pretty mundane by most standards. It gets boring, sometimes it gets into the nitty-gritty, it's a lot about the interplay between media and the administration. Not exactly a crowd pleaser. But for wonks and nerds like me, this is blood sport, baby. This is the octagon.
2 men enter, 1 man leaves.
They're going to be jousting and jabbing at each other, both looking to land that viral shot, either to the gut, an uppercut, whatever it may be, each trying not to embarrass themselves, but also get that moment where they get the other side. The interplay here starts with Peter Doocy asking about Victor Bout, a man known as the Merchant of Death who was exchanged in a prisoner exchange to get the WNBA's Brittany Griner back stateside. Now, Griner went back to the Phoenix Mercury. She averaged about 18 and 8 during the season for them, while Bout has been back to the grind as well, selling millions in weapons to America's enemies. Let's watch the action.
Okay.
Thank you, Karine. Congratulations on the promotion.
Thank you.
You're not leaving us in the briefing room, are you?
Unless you want me to. Do you want me to leave the
No,
room?
sure don't.
All right.
There you go. The jousting started already. A little friendly banter. Each side feeling out the other side. We're going to start to see some action coming up now, though.
Okay.
So the arms dealer that President Biden freed in a prisoner swap, Victor Bout, is now, according to the Wall Street Journal, selling weapons to the Houthis. Does President Biden think that is a problem?
So look, a couple of things. I can't confirm that report today, I believe in the Wall Street Journal. I do want to put out a couple of facts here that is important to note. Look, securing the release of Americans who are being held hostage and wrongfully detained is a big priority, is a priority for this administration. And I would note that we have been extraordinarily successful in getting that done. It is a top priority to get these Americans, again, wrongfully detained and held hostage. And so that is something, and it's not easy.
Music, maestro, please. E flat from the top.
It is not an easy thing to do. It is not. There are some difficult decisions that we have to make. We've been very transparent about that. Very transparent. As you're talking about Victor Boot, that was related to Brittany's release, and so even then, a year and a half ago, we were clear about decisions that have to be made on a number of occasions, and it's incredibly difficult. And we've been transparent about it. We've been very transparent. So look, we're going to continue to do what we can, do everything that we can to bring Americans home who are wrongfully detained and held hostage. And again, frankly, we have had an extraordinary record of doing just that, and that's going to be the president's top priority.
So as you saw, a lot of tap dancing, a lot of moving around the ring, no blows really landed there. Doocy tried to poke and prod about Victor Boot, the Russian arms dealer known as the Merchant of Death, who was released 2 years ago in exchange for Brittany Griner. He's now back in business selling arms, according to reports. Apparently, Boot allegedly brokered a $10 million deal in August to supply the Yemen-based terror group known as the Houthi rebels, who've been attacking Israel and other merchant ships in the Middle East. And the word is now that he's moving beyond the AK-47s that he's dealing currently, at least according to these reports, and maybe moving on to missile purchases that will threaten Israel further, as well as other American efforts to protect the region. But according to KJP, we don't know anything about that, dismissing the reports, and then she goes on to talk about what she really wants to talk about, which is the president's glowing record when it comes to hostage deals and hostage exchanges. I'm sure many people have opinions about that. It's not the point of this video, but as we go into this next exchange, you're going to see both sides are going to come out swinging a little harder than they were when it came to this particular issue, because the next issue is going to really hit home. Literally. Like what you see so far? Go ahead and smash that thumbs up button. Also, leave us a comment and tell us what you're thinking. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss another show. All right, both combatants seem ready to go back for round 2. Let's join the action.
And on this issue of funding, the administration has money to send to Lebanon without Congress coming back. But Congress does have to come back to approve money to send to people in North Carolina. Do I have that right?
Here's what I'm going to be very clear about. The president and the vice president has had a robust whole of government response to this. Hundreds of millions of dollars. I said it at the top, more than $200 million that we have directly put towards survivors here for disaster help. And that's because of this president's commitment to make sure that we are there for communities that are impacted. We take this very seriously again. We take this very seriously. And before the hurricane hit, we pre-positioned more than 1,500 federal folks on the ground to help. And so we have made sure that every state has gotten their storm requested emergency declaration. They requested it, and we made sure they received it. We've taken this very seriously. More than $200 million that we have provided to the impacted areas. But instead, people want to do disinformation, misinformation, which is dangerous,
Well, that certainly escalated. Peter Doocy started asking about money, and it wasn't about the words that he was using. It's about the undertones there. Peter Doocy asking if he's got it right that the Biden administration has all this money to go to Lebanon for whatever relief efforts are needed there because of all the conflict going on between them and Israel. But Congress has to come back to approve money for relief efforts here at home?
Get used to being screwed over.
You get the undertone there, right? It's not about what he asked exactly the words there. The words are pretty innocuous. He wanted to understand the procedure, basically, about how there's money available for Lebanon, but you have to request money for things here at home. And Karine Jean-Pierre picked up on that and ran with it, but she's clearly perturbed and unnerved by the question. I think maybe Doocy landed the shot here, talking about federal folks on the ground? Which agency has the folks? I want to know that. Who are the folks that are on the ground? Where are they from? Who are they representing? What are their functions and all of that? The federal folks on the ground. She was losing her train of thought a little bit. And what does she do right here towards the end? Besides being defensive throughout the entire question, saying that our record is good on things here at home and how dare you infer that they're not, she goes to the old canard that we were talking about in yesterday's video, which, by the way, I'm going to put into the upper right-hand corner of the screen right about now, right there. She goes back to that old canard about spreading misinformation and disinformation and accuses Doocy of that horrible sin of trying to spread narratives that are counter to the narrative of the administration. It's not necessarily misinformation here, as you're about to see. Doocy comes back strong.
Because then when folks on the ground hear that, they may not want to ask for the help that they need. That is there for them. That is there for them. That's our focus here.
But President Biden is fond of saying, show me your budget and I will tell you what you value. If he's got money for people in Lebanon right now, without Congress having to come back, what does it say about his values? There's not enough money right now for people in North Carolina who need it. That's not misinformation.
Wait, no, that is.
Damn!
Doocy hits right back. He was not going to take lying what KJP was talking about here, saying that how dare you accuse us of not taking this seriously. You're spreading disinformation and misinformation that's going to affect people's lives because maybe they won't ask the federal government for money. Like that's ever going to stop people from asking for more money from the federal government, right? States are famous for declaring emergencies and getting federal dollars for them on things much smaller than Hurricane Helene that just happened or Hurricane Milton that is going through Florida as we speak right now. Thoughts and prayers to everybody involved in those areas in relief efforts and to the families who have been affected by these two storms. That said, Karine Jean-Pierre tried to paint Doocy in a false light. He came right back with saying, well, what does it say about the values of this administration if you have money for Lebanon, but you have no money for anybody down south experiencing these hurricanes right now? And Karine Jean-Pierre is going to sound a little triggered here, in my opinion.
Your whole premise of the question is misinformation, sir. What you do, yes, it's misinformation.
Is there money to send to Lebanon right now?
I just mentioned to you that we provided more than $200 million to folks who are impacted in the area, and I just shared with you that people are deciding not to. People are deciding not to.
Wait. To Congress that there's not enough money to help people.
We're
in North
talking
Carolina
about the SBA disaster loan.
That's
yes.
money for people in North Carolina,
and that's important. And people in North Carolina need that. Wait, this is nothing new. Peter, this is nothing new. Congress comes together, they provide money, millions of dollars, for disaster relief. We're asking them to do the job that they have been doing for some time.
From a letter that President Biden sent to Johnson, McConnell, Schumer, and Jeffries. The president's letter is not misinformation. Would you agree?
Doocy comes with the receipts and lands a huge shot on KJP, who up until this point was really weathering the storm here, trying to turn things around on Doocy, calling him a merchant, I guess, of misinformation and disinformation. Let's see this letter that Doocy's talking about. Let's check the receipts right now. So here it is, straight from the White House's website, letter to Congress on disaster needs directed to both houses of Congress. I write to you regarding the needs of the nation as communities across the Southeast devastated by Hurricane Helene assess the extent of damage. They are expecting their federal government to stand behind them in their most urgent time of need. They certainly are. I have seen firsthand the devastation that Hurricane Helene brought to communities across the Southeast. During my travels to North Carolina, South Carolina, Florida, and Georgia, I met with families, business owners, yada, 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 all the stuff that you would normally expect in a letter from the White House. Remember, these letters and correspondence are meant not only for the intended audience that they're addressed to, but also to the nation. They're letters to everyone else who are reading it, like you and me, to show exactly what kind of work the person who wrote the letter, in this case the president, have been doing to fix issues. It's sort of like writing to a judge in my case. When I like to write a letter to an adversary, I like to make sure that the judge is also the intended recipient of it, because they'll eventually read the correspondence that I write.
That's much too early. Prepare to fast forward.
Preparing to fast forward.
Fast forward.
Fast forwarding, sir.
While FEMA has the resources needed for the immediate emergency response, at least one other agency does not. Most urgently, the Small Business Administration Disaster Loan Program will run out of funding in a matter of weeks, and well before the president is planning to reconvene, right before the Congress, I should say, is planning to reconvene. I warned the Congress of this potential shortfall even before the hurricane landed on our shores. I requested more funding for SBA multiple times over the past several months, and most recently, my administration underscored that request as you prepared a continuing resolution to fund the government. Again, talking about all that they did up to this point, trying to make the members of Congress look bad to shame them into action somewhat. In addition, while FEMA's Disaster Relief Fund has the resources it requires right now to meet immediate needs, the fund does face a shortfall at the end of the year. Without additional funding, FEMA would be required to forego longer-term recovery activities in favor of meeting urgent needs. Meanwhile, Lebanon, fully funded, no problem. Money's getting ready to be shipped off, probably as we speak right now. The money is there for the taking for Lebanon. It comes out of different parts of the federal budget allocated to the executive. And while I'm sure that measures could be done within the executive's federal budget to move money around to extend the time needed to fund the SBA or FEMA, it seems like the president here doesn't want to make any of those changes to the extent that they can be made. So he's going to Congress to get more money, and regardless of whether or not our people get that money, the money earmarked for Lebanon, smooth sailing. It looks like Doocy really did land a good blow there. Back to the action.
The president's letter is not misinformation. Would you agree?
No, the way you're asking me the question is misinformation.
Oh, come on!
There's money that we are allocating to the impacted areas, and there's money there to help people who truly need it. There are survivors who need the funding, and it's there.
That you don't like misinformation.
I said that.
This is where Karine Jean-Pierre is losing it. It's not that you're spreading misinformation, it's the way you're asking the question. Hold on a second here. You don't get to decide how questions are asked at you, ma'am. You've been in this game long enough, you should know that. You don't like the way the question's phrased? Tough. Answer the damn question. Although we see here, answering questions not exactly the strong suit of this administration, whether it was Jen Psaki before or KJP now.
How dare you?
Doocy's got her on the ropes right now. Let's see if he can deliver the knockout.
I actually said we have the money available to help survivors of Hurricane Helene and also Hurricane Milton. Now, there's going to be a shortfall, right? Because we don't know how bad Hurricane Milton is going to be. And so we're going to need additional funding. That's
exactly what I just asked about. And you said it was misinformation.
Game, set, match.
What you're asking me is why Congress needs to come back and do their job. That's what you're asking me. Congress needs to come back and do their job and provide extra assistance, extra funding to Disaster Relief Fund. That's what Congress needs to do, and we're going to continue to urge that. You may not want that, but that's okay. That's what this president wants, and that's what the vice president wants. Thanks, everybody.
And she's gone. She's not taking any more questions. Peter Doocy may say, I'm just asking you about the money here. And Karine Jean-Pierre is taking offense, saying, no, what you're asking is why Congress has to come back to deliver the money. She clearly got what he was trying to get at here. You have this money for Lebanon, but you don't have the money for disaster relief. Why weren't you prepared for that?
Yeah, you got money to pay for fake mustaches, huh?
Why is there this shortfall in FEMA for the longer-term efforts? Why is there the shortfall with SBA for disaster relief? Where did that money go? This administration has been delivering billions, with a B, overseas, whether it be to Israel or to Ukraine or to any number of other places that we've talked about over the years. But when it comes time for putting America first, see what I did there? Where's this administration? As you can see, nowhere to be found. On this judge's scorecard, that's a 10-8 round for Doocy. He did an okay job about the whole prisoner swap thing and the resultant multi-million-dollar deals for arms now that are endangering Americans overseas. But he did a tremendous job pointing out the hypocrisy of this administration and exposing where their values are when it comes to where our budget allocations are going. The priority, going overseas. The money is already cleared and ready to go there. Money for Americans to help them out. You got to go through Congress and the whole rigmarole of the process of allocation of even more funds. And we don't know where the funds that should have been there are currently. Where was FEMA allocating funds to? Were they allocating it to migrant efforts, to house migrants, to deal with the migrant crisis that this administration created?
Sounds about right.
Doocy didn't say that, but that's certainly where one could reasonably assume the money went. As for Karine Jean-Pierre, she's exposed here as the agenda gymnast that I talk about in my book, Schnooks, Crooks, Lies, and Scoundrels, a field guide to identifying political buffoons, available right now at Amazon, on Barnes & Noble, and other online bookstores. Karine Jean-Pierre has a goal in mind, to make the administration look good and to avoid any gotchas. And in the process of that, it doesn't matter how she gets there, whether it be answering questions or not answering questions, she just has to get there. She did a poor job of that this go-around because it seemed like she was frazzled by Doocy's question. She sort of took umbrage with it and decided to try to make Doocy out to be the bad guy, leaning on that old canard of misinformation and disinformation, and didn't count on Doocy bringing the receipts in the form of that letter from the White House. And after that, she goes to cast aspersions. Well, maybe you don't want money to get to these disaster-hurt areas, but we're going to work to do that, and we're going to call on Congress to do their job. Meanwhile, the administration's funding priorities were exposed here by Doocy's questioning. So that's my scorecard for this interaction between these two, the latest interaction we have. Tomorrow's another day, and the next day after that as well. How do you think it's going to go then? Let's talk about it in the comments together. And as always, like and share the video with your friends, subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell so you don't miss any of the shows. Let's talk about Peter Doocy and KJP and their next sparring match and all the other shenanigans and buffoonery happening every day this week in DUMBmocracy.
All views and opinions expressed here are not necessarily of the mainstream media and may offend some listeners. It's called political buffoonery.